Welcome into the Big City Sports Podcast. We have another episode coming up, and it is going to be a good one. We have the NHL playoffs that are still taking place, and they have been a lot of fun to watch. The Islanders picked up a win here in Game 5. There's going to be Game 6 on Wednesday. We can't really recap that when this one drops on Thursday, but we're going to get into some of the Islanders and Penguins, that series that's been going on, and then we're also going to talk baseball for the first time in a while. But before we get to all that stuff today, Slig, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing really well, man. I've really been enjoying these NHL playoffs. One upside to being a fan of a team that's not playing is I can just sit back and enjoy these without being stressed out. And we've been blessed with, I think, 11 overtime games so far in the playoffs. We've seen some great series. I've been watching pretty much every game. We've seen a little bit of everything. We've seen the physical nature of the Islanders series and the Florida series, and we've seen and then we see the contrast to any of the Canadian series that don't have any fans yet. And it's just entirely different atmospheres, but it's all been really, really fun and competitive, and I look forward to watching the rest of the tournament.
John Buccigross has to be losing a lot of merchandise there with this Bucci OT challenge. You mentioned about 11 postseason games already in the playoffs, and I love when NHL games in the postseason get to the playoffs because or get to overtime, I should say, because that really means like, wow, it comes down to one goal every single play. Any little turnover, as we get into Game 5 real quick, any little turnover, anything like that, really get in to like, oh my gosh, this could lead to a game-winning goal. And we saw that in Game 5. Bad play by Tristan Jarry behind the net, just flipping it out in front, right there to put it in for the win. It was the Islanders.
Yeah, what an anticlimactic way to end a fantastic hockey game. Congrats to the Islanders for winning. They did a lot of good things, but they can thank Ilya Sorokin and Tristan Jarry for winning the game. Both goaltenders helped them out a lot. But no, I mean, I watched the entire game tonight. I've watched most of the series. The Penguins really were the better team for most of Game 5. They dominated shots and goal. They dominated time in the offensive zone. Even though the Islanders did a pretty good job clogging the neutral zone with that 1-2-2 defensive scheme they always use, Penguins worked around that fairly well by getting to the red line, dumping it in, forechecking. We talked about that on last week's episode, but they had a couple of really brutal and avoidable mistakes even before the Jarry goal the Jarry giveaway in double overtime, and they had some sloppy line changes, some turnovers behind the net, and the Islanders, the scrappy, hardworking team that they are, they took advantage of those opportunities. They didn't play particularly well, but they still won a road playoff game, and they have a 3-2 lead going into Game 6, and they have a chance to advance at home on Wednesday night.
It was a fantastic game from Ilya Sorokin. You briefly noted that he had a lot of great saves, and he's a young goaltender in a big spot. And we saw that a little bit last year with Columbus. You had the two goalies there, Elvis Merzlikins, and then, of course, Jonas Korpisalo in that very long overtime game stand on his head. So we see young goaltenders step up in the playoffs. We saw Spencer Knight get some action and pick up a victory after giving up what could be determined as a soft goal in the first 3 minutes of that one, but then he settled in a little bit. But anyway, going back to Ilya Sorokin, he's just very, very calm and smart as a goaltender. He didn't let the moment get the best of him, and he's been playing a decent amount in this series. I think Varlamov started a game or two there, but I thought that he was very calm, very smart, and controlled his own net tonight.
Oh, no question. That's the thing that stands out about him being so young is the poise and the ability to just, like you said, not make the moment too big, stay. He knows it's a playoff game. Everyone does, but the way he approaches it, it just seems like a normal game to him. He's not adjusting how he plays or panicking. It's a very important quality for a young goaltender, and that's going to bode very well for him as he advances in his career. Sorokin's played 3 of the 5 games in this series, games 1, 4, and 5, and I don't think it's a coincidence that those are the 3 games the Islanders won. And no disrespect intended to Semyon Varlamov, who I think had a top 5 goalie season in the NHL this year and has been better than expected overall since signing that contract after the Islanders kind of controversially let Robin Lehner walk after his season. But long-term, Sorokin is the number 1 goalie for the Islanders. There's no question about that. Varlamov has 2 more years on his contract, but I think we're going to see more and more of a timeshare as it shifts to of Varlamov's contract and the rise of Sorokin. And he has the capability and the potential to be a goalie there for a very long time.
It reminds me of a few years back, the Washington Capitals. They had the veteran of Braden Holtby, who had a very good year, and they still Philip Grubauer caught some heat, and he started taking off in the postseason for Washington. And that's sort of how I feel that Sorokin's doing. But I think it's Sorokin's net the rest of this series. It's the rest of the. You could argue the rest of the playoffs with the way he's been playing. I mean, he's just really good. The defensive structure of the Islanders, we've talked about it many times, and I was a little bit nervous. I love hockey and I love games going super long, but I dreaded there that the Islanders and their defensive scheme, they could let a game honestly go 7 overtimes and there wouldn't be hardly anything going on. But the Penguins did a good job of shooting the puck. They got about 50 shots on goal, you mentioned, and it was a big game on the Penguin side. But once again, great goaltending and great defense from the Islanders here in Game 5.
Well, I want to look at the defense a little bit. So that top pair of Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock were, again, fantastic. But I honestly thought there were some pretty visible cracks in the bottom two pairs. And in the later in the first overtime period, the Islanders barely managed to survive when Nick Leddy and Scott Mayfield were pinned on the ice there for about 2.5 minutes. The Penguins had several shots on goal, a long sustained shift. And with that first overtime, the long change, harder to get to the bench, they were able to pin them in, but they were not able to get one past Sorokin. They overpassed on several occasions throughout the night. I think they let a lot of opportunities go. And I'm not trying to take away anything from the Islanders winning. They did some good things, but to me, this just feels like a game the Penguins gave away on a silver platter. And that wasn't summed up any better by the actual giving the puck away on a silver platter in double overtime. Yeah, I don't think there's a better visual metaphor than that. But the Islanders are going to have to play a cleaner game in Game 6 if they want to clinch the series. I don't think they're going to have all the good fortune again, or if they do, I don't think it's a sustainable formula. We did see the Penguins going up through the neutral zone better than usual. We saw a good amount of scoring chances, and it's unusual to see more than 25, 30 shots in a game. And I understand that this went into a fifth period, but it ended so early in that second overtime that we can really look at it at 4 periods of full play. And the Islanders are giving up 12, 13 shots a period, which is just a little bit unlike them. So that is something I'm sure they're going to need to clean up, and they're going to want to avoid having their second and third pairs pinned on the ice for so long. But I thought that the fourth lines for both teams were factors in this game. And I don't think we give Casey Zizekas enough credit, especially with his ability to win faceoffs.
Yeah, there was a big hit in the corner tonight in Game 5 of that one. Of course, he got flipped. I think it was Wallstrom, was it, in the corner? He took a pretty scary hit, got off the ice ever so gingerly. So that was a little bit of a scary moment there. But I mean, looking at this as the rest of the series unfolds, now we could be dropping this episode and they might have already won the series, or there could be going to Game 7. Let's sort of play out the scenarios a little bit. If this game ends up going to Game 7, who do you think could potentially take it? Or do you think that the style the Islanders play can put them over the top regardless over these next 2 games?
Yeah, I honestly think the Islanders have the advantage here, even if they, while I do think they're going to need to clean up defensively a little bit, not to say they were bad, but if they're going to advance too far in these playoffs, they're going to have to play that gold standard of defense they've had under Barry Trotz the last couple of years. But their goaltending is the major advantage in this series. We talked about that last week when we had Hunter on, and Jarry, again, after his fuck up, we've noticed that they have been targeting high glove side against him. And after he gave the puck away and he sprawled out, his glove was right on his ankle. I mean, there's a reason they keep shooting there. And I'm not even exaggerating, man. Watch the video. But Ilya Sorokin does not have that very visible flaw in his technique. And unless Jarry gets a lesson from Pekka Rinne in between games 5 and 6, it's going to be something that he's going to have to be very cognizant of. And if he overcorrects to that too much, he's going to leave the other side of the net open. It's a very dangerous situation in a playoff series where the Penguins are now with their backs against the wall. And considering that the Penguins offensively have been a little bit inconsistent as well in this series, we've seen games where it's been 2-1 and 3-2 in double overtime, and we've seen a 5-4 game. I don't like their odds of having 2 straight games where they score at least 3 goals on Sorokin to win the series. I would be very surprised.
That's a fantastic point. And they did get Evgeny Malkin back. and he could definitely be a focal point on that offense. It might give Penguins fans a little bit more hope looking forward into these next two games, but it's just, can they click offensively? And we didn't get into it yet, but I want to bring up Jason Zucker, someone that they acquired at the trade deadline, someone that really hasn't made an impact yet for them in the postseason or even in the regular season. He's sort of been a bad acquisition, at least the way he's played on the ice. Do you think that there's any chance that he could find his game?
Yeah, I thought Zucker was better tonight than he had been in the first four games of the series, and not coincidentally with Malkin coming back. He looked fantastic. I thought he was the Penguins' best player in this game, and outside of Sorokin was the best player overall, other than maybe Adam Pelech as well. I thought he really stood out tonight, but. I do think Zucker might be able to provide a goal here in one of the next game or two if there is a game 7. But he was an interesting acquisition at the time, and I know hindsight's 2020. But when you see guys like Kasperi Kapanen and Jared McCann having a more not just instant impact, but consistent impact, considering the investment into Zucker and that he has, I believe, 1 or 2 more seasons on his contract. It's just something that's could be problematic for the Penguins here in the immediate future. But defensively for the Islanders, they play that structure where they clog the neutral zone, where they limit the Penguins, who are a very skilled offensive team. They limit their ability to rush through the ice and have coordinated plays. They have to kind of go to the old fashioned dump it in and chase. And they've done that effectively at points in this series, but it's a style that definitely wears on a team. And considering the deflating nature of the loss tonight, if the Islanders have an early lead in game 6, I think it's over. They're a very difficult team to play when they have a lead, because they're able to just execute their defensive structure so well. And when they stand up at the blue line or in the neutral zone, they're almost impenetrable, even despite all the Penguins' skill offensively.
Yeah, it's like soldiers at the blue line there. They do a good job of kind of what's the word for it? They're good in time of possession too. Usually that's the case. Like if they get ahead in the game, they're good at controlling the puck, letting plays breathe a little bit, take time off the clock, dump it in, get back, make sure you stay fresh with the line changes, and everybody sort of plays that formula when you have a lead. It's just sometimes you can try to get too complacent, and one little catch up there with a 2-0 lead could turn into 2-1. You pull the goalie 2-2, you're in overtime, something like that. So there's so little wiggle room with this team on how can you still be aggressive but still play your style. That's sort of a conservative approach.
Absolutely. And for the most part, I don't like when teams get conservative really early or the entire third period when they have a 1-goal lead. I think it's a little bit better suited for the Islanders than most other teams because of their very good goaltending and defensive situations. But I do think as well that they can't get too complacent with that defense as good as it is. I do think that we've seen ways where Leddy and Mayfield can be attacked and kept on the ice. And I do think to a lesser extent, we've seen that with the Andy Green and Noah Dobson pairing as well. I do think there is a little bit of vulnerability there, just considering some of the inexperience on Dobson's end. And the fact that Leddy and Mayfield have been a little bit inconsistent of that second pair all season. It's just the one relative weakness for the obvious overall strength of the Islanders. The Islanders are not going to be the team that is going to win with explosive offense most of the time. They have their moments. We've talked about that before. Stylistically, they could be considered boring, but they're really effective. And the style that they play is really going to grind on a team in a playoff series where they're physical. They just need to make sure that they're not allowing the Penguins to establish their forecheck. If they do that, they're going to be almost impossible to beat.
I think they're in a great spot right now. And I know I said on the last episode that Pittsburgh's going to end up taking this series pretty handedly, but boy, was I ever wrong. If they were to win this series, they'd probably be playing Boston. And how do you think they'd match up? If for some reason that game 7 is already won by the time this episode's dropped, how do you feel they would match up against a Boston team that's pretty hot right now?
Yeah, the Bruins have already advanced. That they beat the Capitals in 5 games in another series between teams I'm not exactly fond of. If this ended up being an Islanders Bruins series, that's where we'd see the equalizer in net. Boston absolutely has a fantastic goaltending situation with Tuukka Rask, and even Swayman played pretty well if he is forced into a series when he played at the end of the regular season. So the one huge advantage, like, the Penguins and Islanders have different strengths. The Penguins to very basically sum it up. The Penguins are a more talented offensive team. The Islanders are a much better defensive team, and the Islanders have the better goaltending, right? It's not quite that black and white against Boston, who is deeper offensively, a more physical team. They, as usual, are pretty solid in the defensive end as well. So they're a much more well-rounded team that doesn't have quite the same top-end Crosby Malkin talent, but it's really close. And the Islanders' biggest advantage in net would be balanced out a little bit. So I think it would be a really, really good series to watch. Those teams were very physical in their regular season matchups. And like I said about this series, I think it would go at least 6 games.
Yeah, I think that would be a phenomenal series. So hopefully the Islanders can advance, so we could potentially be seeing that matchup. As you shake your head, because
Don't be saying that.
Come on now, it's another team we can talk about in the NHL playoffs. But
we can talk about them recapping their season,
next week. There we go.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that.
No bias at all here.
Let's head over to baseball here. Basically, what's going to happen today? A lot of White Sox and Yankees news to touch on. Not really much with the Mets and Cubs, so that's going to be a little bit shorter. But first of all, let's get into the White Sox situation with Tony La Russa. Obviously, this is sort of old now, how it's been out for a few weeks now of what occurred on the 3-0 pitch where Yermin Mercedes, against a position player, ended up taking a big old hack and deposited one over the outfield wall, and he rounded the bases for a home run. And that raised some controversy. It goes back to Fernando Tatis's 3-0 grand slam last year and the unwritten rules of baseball, where all these old heads and purists of the game, which I am a purist, but I also hope that the game changes a little bit, lets these young players bring out their personality, because the game is lacking excitement. So that's where I stand on the situation. How do you feel about Yermin Mercedes swinging 3-0?
Yeah, I don't care, and neither should anybody else. The game was decided, and people can swing at any pitch they so choose. People are swinging 3-0 more than ever. I don't personally like to swing when the Yankees swing 3-0 when I'm watching a game, but not because I'm morally opposed to it. I just think that the likelihood that they pop up or ground out isn't worth the one home run on the season they might hit. But they're talking about disrespecting the game and the opponent. The Twins put a fucking catcher on the mound in the 9th inning. They weren't competing anymore. So I don't want to hear any bullshit about them saying that they're still competing in that game or respecting it. And I mean, so if he hit a home run on a 3-1 pitch up 11, would it have been okay? It's just the logic is so stupid to me. And then the White Sox, you would also, if you're Yermin Mercedes or anyone else on that team, wouldn't you want your manager to stand up for you instead of not only criticizing you hitting the home run, but then also saying, I don't have a problem with the Twins throwing at you the next day?
That is where it pisses me off. That gets me fired up and gets my blood boiling. You're Tony La Russa. You're an old head. We've had these conversations the day he was hired. How is he going to appeal to these younger generations? And I brought up the point that Albert Pujols texted Jose Abreu once the signing happened of Tony La Russa. He said he's going to be the best manager you played for. And there is some things in the clubhouse that are swaying different ways, and being okay with a team throwing at your players, that's not okay. And I know that you're this old head and you're this guy that tries to stick with the times. Now, this might be a little stupid that comes out of my mouth here, but their slogan is change the game, and their manager doesn't want to change the game. So it kind of makes no sense that he's wearing something on his chest that says change the game, but he's out there yelling at the Twins, trying to get them to throw it, or not necessarily getting them to throw at it, but not being upset that you're being thrown at. And the thing that pisses me off most, Lance Lynn tried standing up and coming up with a different direction of how it should be approached. Tony La Russa said, he has a locker, I have an office. That pisses me off.
Yeah, I didn't care for that either. It's a very clear contrast of styles with a mostly young team, especially lineup wise, that's getting better and better. The White Sox are still having a good year so far overall, but this is a really stupid conversation that we even need to be having in the first place. And if the White Sox hired a manager that wasn't Tony La Russa, the likelihood of this happening, this conversation even existing, would be next to nothing. So it's just, to me, it's a very bizarre situation. I thought the whole thing was stupid. The game was long over. What's the difference difference of losing 15-4, 16-4 anyway. It just, like you said, where change the game. And then when there's a clear change where that 3-0 unwritten rule is starting to change, I'm going to start bitching about it. I always felt he was kind of a square peg fit in a round hole for this White Sox team. And one thing we know with Tony La Russa with regards to your main Mercedes, it's not the first time he hasn't known how to handle a Mercedes.
Wow. Okay. Anyway, I'll say this from an on-field perspective. I'll say I saw a tweet. I can't say who it's from. I honestly do not recall, and I'll pop up a graphic if I can find it so I can quote the guy. But he said that home run helps Yerman Mercedes in arbitration. It does not help Williams Astudillo, who is pitching. It does not help him at all in arbitration. So if it's 3-0 and you have another home run on your stats that's trying to get you more money in the offseason, aren't you going to swing the bat?
Yeah, they're all going to look the same on your baseball card, and they're going to look the same if you have more money in your bank account too.
Exactly. I'm glad we're on the same page here. But
Weird,
the White Sox also got destroyed by the New York Yankees this weekend. A clean sweep on that front. First, we'll talk about the White Sox side of it before we get into the Yankees' pure domination. The White Sox are 3-7 in their last 10. They're up against the Cardinals as we record right now. This White Sox team, they have pretty solid pitching. Giolito has been fairly good. Rodon's came out of nowhere, had a great year. Lance Lynn has been a heck of a pickup. Dane Dunning hasn't looked too good in Texas right now. But this team is starting to actually they have a good roster, but right now it seemed like the Yankees just absolutely destroyed them.
I mean, the Yankees ended up sweeping the series, but two of the games were one-run games. The bigger thing in the series overall was the White Sox lack of ability to score runs. They scored one run that, frankly, they didn't really deserve in the opener on Friday night, and then were shut out on Saturday before the bats awoke for 4 runs on Sunday, but still ended up losing at the end. The starting pitching has been fantastic, and Giolito hasn't been off to a great start overall. He's been good, not great, a little inconsistent. We've seen that at times from him in his career with the free passes he issues. But Carlos Rodon in the opener, I mean, the guy barely made the rotation, and he has become indispensable almost immediately. He's already thrown a no-hitter, and he's had several other great starts with that fastball slider combo. He went 6 innings in the game and struck out 13, didn't walk anybody. It wasn't his fault that they eventually lost. And Dylan Cease wasn't great in the game on Saturday, but he's had a pretty good season overall as well. I thought the worst of the starting pitching from the White Sox came from Keuchel on Sunday. And while he's been pretty good also, while he ended up only giving up 2 runs, he also only lasted 4 innings because he threw 100 pitches.
Yeah, Keuchel, I mean, you're kind of asking for trouble going up against that Yankees lineup that's purely right-hand dominant. And they tend to hit the long ball fairly well. And I know Keuchel's a ground ball pitcher, but even then, I feel like Keuchel, he's up and down at this point in his career. You know what you're going to get. He's probably a 4 at best right now in your rotation. And I think that's okay. You're going to get that sometimes with the White Sox. But I mean, right now, the thing that concerns me is the health of the White Sox offense. Obviously, they're missing Jimenez, Robert. Nick Madrigal hit his first home run the other day. That was pretty cool. He was rounding the bases and looked like he's never hit one in his life. But anyway, the White Sox offense should be getting a boost here soon. Adam Engel's out on a rehab assignment, so hopefully that gives them something in the outfield. One more thing before we get into the Yankees. Adam Eaton has not looked that good so far after a good March, I should say, because he had a few good games before it got into April.
Yeah, he's definitely been struggling. His batting average is down into the low 210s, I believe. And while that's actually not that bad compared to the baseball average anymore, he's only one guy in a key cog that's been struggling a bit. Tim Anderson has been struggling a bit recently as well. He had an 0-for-17 slide that he eventually ended in the Yankee series. And I have no doubt that he'll rebound from that. Even with the 0-for-17, he's still hitting close to 300. But until the game on Sunday and until later in the game on Sunday, the final game of the series, the entire offense was shut down pretty easily. While I do think we've seen some encouraging signs from Yohan Moncada, and Abreu has been good again, I believe. Yeah, and we're seeing the impact that Yasmani Grandal has been having. It's just been a little bit more few and far between. And the White Sox are a team that hits a lot of home runs typically as well. And until the game on Sunday, they didn't have any. And it's no coincidence that's why they scored a total of 1 run in the first 2 games.
Yeah, it was a tough series for the White Sox. They're looking to beat the Cardinals right now, who are coming off. They actually ended up winning game one on Monday night at 5-1 score. Lance Lynn picked up the W. But let's head into the Yankees side of things, and they're on fire right now. I think they've won 6 in a row, including the sweep against the White Sox. What have you seen that the Yankees have been doing well?
It's been the starting pitching. No question about that. I mean, we talked about the Kluber no hitter. I think I had that reaction live last week because I had it on while we were recording this. But he isn't the only one. As of this recording, and I'm sure this won't be true by the time the episode drops, but the Yankees have had 35 consecutive scoreless innings from their starting pitching. So it wasn't just Kluber. He had the no hitter, obviously, but Jordan Montgomery, Domingo Herman, and Garrett Cole all had a 7 shutout inning start. And even Jamison Tyone, who's been the weakest spot in the rotation so far this season, had 5 shutout innings in Sunday's game. So that's definitely been rolling. The bullpen, for the most part, has been pretty good, despite the injuries to Zach Britton, who still hasn't come back and may have hit a setback, and Darren O'Day, who got hurt a couple of weeks ago. They've still been very effective overall. Aroldis Chapman gave up his first earned run of the season yesterday, and thankfully the Yankees were able to pick him up after that. He's been really, really good. For the most part, Chad Green and Jonathan Loaisiga have been as well. So the Yankees have not been winning these games with offense. Like, I still have concerns about that. And Giancarlo Stanton's on the injured list for the 69th time this year. But yeah, nice. I said that on purpose. Nice. If while the starting pitching being this dominant is not sustainable, there have been signs of the rotation being an above average one for most of the season. And we've really seen that come to fruition here in the last week.
Yeah, I just hope that the Yankees rotation can continue this success. Obviously, they're not going to be as dominant as they have been these last few games, but if they can really put this rotation together and get meaningful innings out of that rotation, when the offense finally starts to pick back up, I think Gleyber Torres only has 2 home runs right now. He needs to start swinging the bat with more power and start to pick up the power department there. DJ LeMahieu could still be better, I think. He could still find a way to bring that average up a little bit more. And then the other guys, you finally get Stanton going, you get a healthy Judge. If that team can finally stay healthy and get their players back and not hit the shelf every month and just try to find a way to find some sort of consistency, and with the rotation pitching well and the way the bullpen's played, that's when this team's going to be good. So hopefully that this rotation can continue the success throughout the rest of the season and not just be a bright spot in a mere dire pit.
Right. It's also helped reduce the strain on the bullpen a little bit, and because they were working a lot of innings at the beginning of the year. And offensively, while Gleyber Torres hit his second home run in the first White Sox game, he also had a massive series against the White Sox. I think we need to mention that. He ended up having 8 hits in the series, and I want to say he finished with 7 RBIs in the 3 games. So he's starting to pick things up offensively. Had a couple of big 2-out hits with runners in scoring position. The Yankees didn't win this series with home runs. Torres hit a solo home run that wouldn't have been a home run in any other stadium in the opener. And Mike Ford hit one that definitely would have been a home run in Saturday's game. But that's it. The rest of the Yankee offense came from just timely singles and a bases loaded walk in the 9th inning. So I think that's an encouraging sign in one sense. But you mentioned the offense being inconsistent. Clint Frazier's been really struggling all year. He did have 3 hits in the final game of the series. So I'm hoping that helps get him going a little bit, because he's going to be playing with Aaron Hicks, who also has been struggling. He's going to be out for most, if not all, of the season, getting surgery on his wrist. And he was the one switch hitter in the lineup. So that makes a pretty right-handed lineup even less versatile. So that's something to keep an eye on. I expect the Yankees to try to address the center field spot at some point here closer to the trade deadline. And we'll see if the offense can get going. But the pitching staff has definitely done their part.
I'm going to say Estevan Florial is called up by June 1.
I think that seems likely, but even if he is, I think he'd be a bit of a short-term answer rather than the long-term call-up, just because of how deep the Yankee outfield is, even after the trade of Mike Tauchman. They only have so many at-bats to go around, but I'd love to see it. He was a highly touted prospect who I believe briefly made his debut last season or the year before, but he struggled at various points in the minor leagues, and this is the best we've seen from him in AAA in a long time. I'm hoping it's something that he can build off of, but if he is called up, he would still have rotational at bats.
I personally, when you mentioned center field being an issue, I'd get him in the lineup for a solid 2 weeks, even if you see how it is. Lead him, not necessarily lead him off, but put him in center field. See if he can use that speed to his advantage. And I know I'm going to bring up a name that's going to make you want to punch me in the mouth, but he can be a 2017 Jacoby Ellsbury, where he was a decent player with like a 283 average. He could find a way to at least get on base and use his speed to his advantage. And I think that would still be a serviceable fit in that lineup. Gives you a left-handed bat. Maybe you never know what happens with a young kid.
Could we get 2011 Jacoby Ellsbury instead?
No, you're not going to get that from a kid coming from the minors.
Yeah, well, that's what the Red Sox thought when they called them up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But what do you see from this Yankees team that you think might hold them back if you had to pinpoint one thing?
I mean, it's obviously to me, it's the offense. They've had
Really?
several key guys. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the pitching staff is going to be this good all season, but even before the no hitter, there were some encouraging signs from Corey Kluber. Domingo Herman has been better. Montgomery's a little bit inconsistent, but he has his good moments as a number 4, hopefully number 5 starter. And you have to remember that Luis Severino is expected back at some point in June or July as well. And hopefully the rotation gets even better. And when the bullpen, if Zach Britton and Darren O'Day come back healthy, that should be a strength of the team. Even without them, it's been good. It could get even better when they return. I have a lot more concerns about them offensively. While Judge has been doing pretty well lately, LeMahieu hasn't been quite the same. We haven't gotten much production out of Gary Sanchez again, or Frazier, Brett Gardner, and the second base spot when Rougned Odor is playing. He's had a couple big hits. There are just to me, some big question marks. It's still a strikeout heavy lineup, and they haven't been hitting many home runs, and that's supposed to be their calling card. So that, while I do expect there to be peaks and valleys, it's got to be better. The Yankees won 3 games this week, scoring only 2 runs, and that's not going to happen forever.
Hopefully that offense can get healthy here soon and they can start playing some pretty good baseball down the stretch because the Rays are humming. Now, let's head over, speaking of injuries and what could cause it. Let's go to the Mets. And although they are in first place, they have been destroyed with the injury bug. I don't think I have seen this many injuries. Let me go through the list real quick of key players that are hurt. Brandon Nimmo has a finger that he banged up on May 16th, put on the IL. He left his rehab assignment in AAA to receive treatment. So he had a rehab assignment, got hurt in the rehab assignment. Guillerme's on the IL, not a big player. We head to Taijuan Walker's side. He's on the IL. Albert Almora's shoulder is able to play catch, but can't swing a bat on the IL. Kevin Pillar got smacked in the face by a baseball. Jacob deGrom, side, hurt. J.D. Davis, finger, and he's actually on a rehab assignment, AAA Syracuse. Left his rehab assignment with neck stiffness. Noah Syndergaard, elbow, of course. Dellin Betances, shoulder. Jeff McNeil, hamstring. Such a significant one. He's going to be out till late June. Michael Conforto, hamstring. Also a significant one. Going to keep him out until late June. Carlos Carrasco, hamstring. Isn't expected to return until early July. Pete Alonso, hand. Is going to be a brief stay on the injured list, but still 10 days. Jordan Yamamoto got hurt in his only start, which happened against the Marlins. Seth Lugo is expected to return from the injured list. So he is going to be coming back here soon, sometime this week. But that is a lot of key players that are hurt.
Yeah, it was nighttime when you started that list, and now I see the sun coming up outside my window here.
Take a picture.
Really quick for anyone listening, DeGrom's absence should be a short one. I believe he is due to make a start here in the next couple of days coming back, which is great news for the Mets. But I mean, they've had a lot of trouble scoring runs all season, and considering several big names in their lineup were on that list of guys you just mentioned, there's definitely some explanation to it. But I believe they've only scored 140 runs on the season, which is they have a minus 14 run differential, and they're still leading a very bad National League East right now. They're the only team above 500. The Braves have been struggling a lot more than anticipated, and I don't expect that to last forever. The Mets pitching staff has absolutely kept them alive. They've had some depth. We talked about all the guys they brought in with Carrasco and Taijuan Walker, who are both injured again right now. And while I do expect the Mets to improve here a bit, especially when some of their guys come back, their offense, I don't think is going to be a huge strength of the team. Because when those guys are all coming back at different times, it's gonna take them time to get in rhythm. And we got to talk about one of the few guys who you didn't mention on that list, and that's Francisco Lindor, who's been struggling big time all year.
Yeah, Lindor, new city, same smile, different performance. This guy, 182 batting average, 2 home runs on the year. He just looks lost. He's home alone too, lost in New York. That's what Francisco Lindor is right now, and he has no clue what he's doing at the plate. He has no clue what he's doing in the field. Hopefully that'll stop, and hopefully he can find what he had in Cleveland. And I know it's still early, it's May. I'm probably going to look like an idiot going back on this, but even if he has a fantastic back half, he's probably not going to finish with an average above 278.
Well, I don't really care about the batting average too much. I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's a stat that's being valued less and less across baseball, and I don't think any team sums that up better than the Mets. If you look at their box scores, you got most of the lineup hitting under 200, and they're still winning a little bit more often than not. So there are ways around it. But considering the massive investment in Lindor, both with the trade and then with the huge contract where he got 11 years, I believe, they're going to want a lot more out of him than the 182. And I definitely expect some improvement, and I expect it quick. But we're almost 2 months into the season now, so it's definitely a concern in the first year of a massive deal. And the Mets offense won't truly reach its potential unless he starts to hit like the player we know he can be and has been in Cleveland his entire career before this.
And another name that really hasn't done much is James McCann, who is a awful signing so far in his Mets tenure. And he was someone that was going to get starters money. We saw what he was going to do with the White Sox, or what he did with the White Sox, I should say, backing up or potentially splitting time with Yasmani Grandal. He was going to get paid no matter where he went. And he has not been good so far in his Mets career outside of a diving play, a SportsCenter top 10 diving play at first base today.
No, absolutely. He's been disappointing so far. We knew he was going to get big money, and the Mets, we've talked about with Steve Cohen, they have deep pockets. They can afford to sign whoever the hell they want. But McCann has just not provided that consistent juice. He hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been the good hitting catcher that we've seen in the past with Detroit and Chicago. And it doesn't help his case that when Tomas Nido came in, they've gotten a little bit more offensive juice from him. So it's not a great sign. It's good for the Mets that they have pretty good overall roster depth, and that's helped them weather this storm a little bit, along with the struggles of the rest of their division. But it's definitely something that they're going to have to get over sooner rather than later. They're going to need to try to get some of these guys back from the injured list, and then try to get them in rhythm offensively. Because if they keep scoring the 2.5, 3 runs a game, they're not going to get that far. They've had some good fortune playing in a weak division, and that injury list is really extensive. They definitely have some excuses, but at the same time, every other team in the league is going to have injuries too. Nobody's going to feel sorry for them. The guys that are still healthy are going to have to try to step up.
Yeah, they will. And this Mets team, I mean, let's be honest, they have excuses in May every year. It doesn't matter if there's injuries or not. But anyway, this division is still pretty tough, regardless of the piss poor play that's been happening in there. I think they're the only team over 500 right now. And it seems like every single team is at least 2.5 games of first place. So it's going to be a dogfight in the NL East. I believe those records are going to go up a little bit. But anyway, that's going to wrap up the Mets talk. Let's head over to the Cubs a little bit. The bullpen has been fantastic. You have young kids like Keegan Thompson, Justin Steele stepping in there, pitching their tails off. Dylan Maples, who we brought up, was going to be a name that I thought was absolutely horrible. He has the stuff, couldn't put it together. He's found a way to put it together. And the back end, Craig Kimbrell is finally pitching to that contract.
Oh, you sound happy about that. No, I would be too.
Just trade him now.
We talked about. Oh man, no, we've talked about the Yankees starters being dominant. The Cubs bullpen has been just as dominant for them in recent weeks. It basically stole the series against the Cardinals for them most recently, along with the home run that Javier Baez hit to help them take 2 out of 3 there. And the Cardinals are the only team in front of the Cubs right now in that division, and nobody's really ran away with that one either. The Pirates have struggled like we all expected, but with Milwaukee and Cincinnati playing very middling baseball, the Cubs are right there in the hunt of it again, despite some of their own flaws. And I wanted to ask a question. I've seen some interesting things with Albert Alzolay. What have you seen from him?
I like Adbert a lot, and you know that I've been bringing his name
Albert,
up.
My bad. I did not mean to.
It's
thinking of Fat Albert in my head for some reason.
It's all right. Either way, it's a hard name to say, but either way, Alzolay, he is. I think this is the first year that I've really felt confident as a fan, knowing that he's an MLB starting pitcher. Like, I know for a fact this year, whenever he takes the ball, I don't have to be like, oh, great, he's pitching. Let's see what version we're going to get. It seems like you're getting the same thing every start from him. He has the high strikeout total. He's going to give up a home run or two. He's going to walk a few guys, but he's going to get out of jams. And he usually can't go late into games. He usually only tops out about six innings there, but it seems like he's finally starting to pick up that stamina, which I thought would potentially make him go to the bullpen later on in his career. But the strikeout stuff is there, and he stepped up. He's honestly been one of the most consistent pitchers in this rotation.
Do you see any sort of innings limit in his future later in the season? We've seen that with some younger pitchers before.
I could see an innings limit on him because he's had shoulder injuries in the past throughout his younger minor league career. And it's just, I could see how they might find a way to limit his innings. You still have some pitchers there. You have Alec Mills, who's banged up right now. You have Trevor Williams, who I think is going to be DFA'd sometime by August. But either way, I mean, there's so many pitchers in that rotation. Zach Davies has had a bad year. If he finds a way to pick up some stuff to where he can spin it together, maybe June, maybe you get something back in a trade for him. There's going to be a bunch of moving pieces on this team. And I think that's a credit to where this team's going to go in a direction into the future right now this season. I think Jock Peterson, he's been a pretty solid signing ever since he came off the IL. He's been hitting the baseball, and I was not too fond of that at first. I know once I say it's a good signing, he plays bad. Once I say it's a bad signing, he plays good. So expect an 0 for 20 coming up here soon. But either way, I think the Cubs team right now, they just need to find a way to get healthy. The outfield has really been banged up. Ian Happ finally came back, but Jason Hayward's out with the hamstring. I mean, when you have guys like Nick Martini on the roster, you're not doing yourself a favor. So just got to find a way to get healthy and hope the bullpen success continues.
Yeah, and similar to the Yankee starters, I don't think the Cubs bullpen being this dominant is a sustainable formula, but I do think there's enough there where it could be a strength of the team, at least in limited doses. Obviously, you want to get the starters deeper into games if possible to take some of the pressure off of them where they're not getting 12 or 15 outs every night. But I do think the what we've seen out of Craig Kimbrell has been really encouraging and long overdue considering his pedigree and how much he's getting paid. But I think the Cubs have also gotten a little bit more production out of their offense from a couple of guys, especially Chris Bryant, than they could have expected considering the last couple of years. And Jed Hoyer kind of said it himself. The Cubs are heading for a very, very interesting decision here coming up at the trade deadline in a couple of months in terms of, are they going to be aggressive in pursuing a winner? Or are they going to be a little bit more passive or even active sellers? It's just that they have so many possibilities long-term. I'm curious to see, but at least so far in this season, right now, they're the only NL Central team that's trending up a little bit. And that's a good sign for them.
That's true. They are trending up, and Chris Bryant's going to end up getting paid. I think he's got value right now. And the reason he has value, he's played 33 games in the outfield this year. He's played 14 at third base. He's played center about 8 times. He's played left 14 times. He's played right field 11 times. And that's going to be something Scott Boras, my guy's versatile. My guy could do this. My guy could, he's going to end up getting paid. And the way he's producing offensively, you haven't seen it in a very long time. So he's finally clicking at the plate, and he could potentially have some trade value if they start hitting something down the stretch.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to hear you talk glowingly about Chris Bryant after all this time.
Yeah, it's not something I like to do, but hey, he's earned it.
People just love proving you wrong, don't they?
They do. Oh man, it's rough. I think that's where we're gonna leave it for this episode. We're gonna wrap this one up. Talked Islanders, talked baseball. There should be more baseball talk coming up here soon because it's baseball season. We're gonna start finding out some things about these teams that either gonna drive us nuts or not. I will say one thing. All 4 of our teams have great closing pitching. Chapman's been good. Hendricks has been good. Kimbrell's been good. And the Mets guy, I'm drawing a blank. He's been good.
Diaz.
Yes. Diaz has been good. So all 4 teams are closing out games and doing well. Kelenick's not good, but that's a topic for another day. We're going to wrap it up next week, diving into more baseball stuff, see if the Islanders are still in the playoffs and getting into more playoff hockey stuff.
Talk about a little bit of playoff basketball, I would assume, as
well. You are right.
Just to recap how the Nets and the Knicks are doing, I believe.
Yes, we're going to be recapping Nets-Knicks. We'll see if the Knicks can find a way to get back on track after that insane game that you don't even want to get started on. So Swig has thoughts when it comes to Knicks and also the Nets. We have some NBA talk coming up along with more baseball stuff here on the Big City Sports Podcast. Make sure you check us out. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and make sure you leave a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Leave a review and turn your notifications on so you can see our pretty little faces whenever we drop a video. So until next time, with Swig, I'm Dylan Kearns. We will see you later.